My name is Vivian Calder, and at 38 years old, I had already paid off the business degree my father still used like a chain around my neck. He called me on a Monday morning while I was sitting in my office in downtown St. Louis, reviewing a financial report that had enough hidden damage inside it to close a company by Friday. My father, Harlan Calder, did not ask where I was. He did not ask how I was doing. He said my younger sister Lorna was getting married that weekend, and I was expected to come home to Briar Falls, Missouri, smile for the photographs, and not make the family look bad. Then he added the line he had been saving for years. Don't show up with that cold attitude of yours, Vivian, or you can forget about the money I put aside for your education. I looked at the framed certificate on my wall, the one with my name on it, the one I had paid for with 12 years of work and no help from him. I almost laughed. But I didn't. I just said, "What time should I be there?" My father thought that was obedience. It was not. It was the sound of a woman deciding to stop arguing and start watching. I was a forensic financial examiner. That means people called me when money disappeared, when signatures appeared where they should not be, when a sweet story had ugly numbers hiding underneath it. My father never knew that. To him, I was still the difficult daughter who left town, the daughter who asked too many questions, the daughter who did not clap every time Lorna breathed. Lorna had been the center of our house since she was 8, when a bad infection nearly took her hearing and scared my parents so deeply they never recovered. She got better, but the family stayed sick in a different way. Every birthday became Lorna's day. Every holiday became Lorna's comfort. Every hard bill, every excuse, every family sacrifice somehow found her name at the end of it. I became the quiet one, the one who cleaned the kitchen after everyone praised Lorna's courage, the one who learned that needing less was the fastest way to be loved less too. Before I go further, if you have ever been called selfish just because you stopped begging for your own place in the family, stay with this story, because sometimes the person they ignore is the only person who can read the danger coming. The groom's name was Dorian Vale, and from the moment my mother mentioned him, something in me tightened. She said Dorian had helped Dad move some retirement money. She said Dorian knew a private lender who could make the old house work harder. She said Dorian had taken such an interest in the family that he felt like a son already. Helpful men do not scare me. Helpful men who arrive with private lenders, investment ideas, and perfect timing scare me very much. I drove back to Briar Falls 2 days before the wedding, not because I wanted to play hero, but because my father had mentioned money and Dorian in the same sentence. The Calder house sat at the edge of town, a white farmhouse with a red porch swing and a screen door that slapped shut like a warning. My father had spent 30 years bragging that the house was paid off. "Nobody can touch this place," he used to say. That was his crown. That house was not just wood and paint to him. It was proof that he had been right about everything. And proud men are easiest to rob when the thief first calls them wise. Dorian was sitting in my parents' living room when I arrived, wearing a charcoal suit and a smile that looked practiced in a mirror. He shook my hand with both of his and said, "Lorna talks about you all the time." That was my first clear lie, because Lorna and I barely spoke unless someone died, married, or needed a casserole dish returned. He called my father Sir twice, then Harlan once, testing which version made my father glow. By dinner, he was calling him Dad. My father looked at him like he had finally received the son he believed he deserved. I watched Dorian ask questions that sounded warm but gathered information. Who owned the house? Whose name was on the deed? Whether my mother signed checks? Whether Lorna had power of attorney during the last hospital scare? Nobody else heard the trap being built. They heard charm. I heard a man measuring locks. That night, I opened my laptop in my childhood bedroom, the same room where my old debate trophies sat in a box because my father said they made the shelves look crowded. I searched Dorian Vale first. His business was called Vale Heritage Partners, which sounded expensive and meant nothing. Registered 6 months earlier. Address listed as a mailbox suite behind a dry cleaner in Kansas City. No securities registration, no advisory license, no history before spring. A man with no history is not always dangerous, but a man selling investment advice with no license and a rented mailbox is not a blessing from God. So I searched harder. Phone numbers, old addresses, registered agents. Then the first crack opened. 2 years earlier, the same phone number belonged to a dissolved company in Arkansas under another name, Dorian Vale. Same birth month, same middle initial, same signature style. That company had complaints attached to it from retirees who had moved savings into a family protection trust and then watched their money vanish behind paperwork they did not understand. I printed everything. 1 page became 5. 5 became 12. By midnight, I had a blue folder on my bed with Dorian's new name on the front and his old name hiding inside it. The next morning, I tried to warn my father quietly. That was my mistake, but I needed to make it so I could sleep later. I sat with him on the porch while he drank coffee from the mug Lorna gave him and told him Dorian's company was not licensed. I told him the address was a mailbox. I told him people had lost money under a similar company connected to Dorian's old identity. My father did not ask to see the documents. He did not ask how I knew. He looked at me with that hard little smile he saved for moments when he wanted me small. "You always were jealous of your sister," he said. "Lorna finally found a man who takes care of this family, and here you come with your little ledger trying to poison it." My mother stood behind the screen door, one hand over her mouth, and said, "Vivian, please don't do this before the wedding." That hurt more than my father, because my mother knew. Mothers always know more than they admit. She knew I was not cruel. She knew I did not invent problems for attention. But peace was her religion, and she worshipped it even when it cost her daughter the truth. I caught Lorna alone later, folding ivory napkins for the reception. She looked beautiful and nervous, the way brides look when they are trying to convince themselves nerves are joy. I asked if she knew much about Dorian's business. Her face changed before I finished the question. "He warned me you'd do this," she said. "He said you would act concerned, but really you just can't stand that Dad finally respects someone besides you." I almost smiled at that, because Dad had never respected me enough for that sentence to be true. Dorian had done clean work. He had placed my role before I arrived. Bitter older sister, jealous, cold, educated just enough to be dangerous but not enough to be believed. I reached across the table and touched Lorna's hand. "I love you," I said. "And when this hurts, I want you to remember I tried to stop it before everyone saw." She pulled her hand away. That told me everything. She was not my enemy. She was already inside the trap. The hard proof came from county records. My father's sacred paid-off house had a new lien against it for $182,000, opened through a private lending company tied to Dorian's little mailbox empire. My mother's signature was on 1 page, but the date was wrong. It was dated the same afternoon she had been at my aunt's doctor appointment 3 towns away. That was the new twist that turned my stomach cold. This was no longer just charm and manipulation. Somebody had placed my mother's name where her hand had not been. Then I found the wedding day document. It was not called a deed transfer. Men like Dorian know better than to use honest labels. It was called a Family Legacy Protection Agreement. It would move controlling interest in the house into a trust managed by Dorian after the wedding, supposedly for tax benefits and future care planning. My father would sign it proudly in front of guests, thinking he was giving Lorna security. In truth, he would be handing the keys of his life to a man who had changed names like coats. I ordered certified copies of everything I could. Stamps, seals, filings, not opinions, not feelings. Facts. If my father wanted to call me bitter, he would have to say it over government paper. The rehearsal dinner was where my father sharpened the knife in public. He stood at the restaurant with a glass in his hand and told everyone Dorian was the kind of man who understood family duty. Then he looked straight at me and said, "Some children leave home and count other people's money. Some people stay and build something real." The room laughed softly, the way rooms laugh when an old man is being cruel, but calling it humor. My face stayed still. Inside, something old and tired finally stood up. Dorian watched me from across the table. He knew I had found something. After dinner, he cornered me near the coat rack and asked, "Since you work with numbers, Vivian, tell me something. If a father wanted to pass property to his younger daughter before marriage, what's the cleanest way to do it?" I looked at him and said, "I mostly find dirty ways people pretend are clean." His smile disappeared for half a second. That half second was enough. He knew. I knew. And the next day, one of us was going to bleed in front of the whole town. The wedding was held in a church with stained glass windows and a reception at a country club my parents could not afford. Dorian had paid for most of it, or so everyone believed. That was part of the performance. The generous groom, the grateful father, the beloved younger daughter. And me, seated near the back with cousins who remembered me only when they needed tax advice. Halfway through the reception, Dorian stood up and tapped his glass. He gave a speech about family, legacy, and protecting the people who raised the woman he loved. My father wiped his eyes. Lorna smiled like she was being rescued. Then Dorian brought out a leather folder and said he had arranged a special signing, a beautiful family gift that would secure the Calder home for the next generation. My father stood. The notary stepped forward. The pen was placed in his hand. That was when I rose from the back table with my blue folder. If you are listening to this and your hands are shaking for me, understand something. I was not brave because I felt no fear. I was brave because the fear had finally become smaller than the truth. My father saw me walking and grabbed the microphone. "Well, here comes Vivian with her little ledger," he said, and the room laughed. I had to threaten her college money just to get her here, but at least she showed up before dessert. That was the last insult he ever gave me for free. I stopped beside the head table and said, "You did threaten me, Dad. But you were threatening me with money you never paid and I never needed." The laughter thinned. I opened the folder and laid the first certified page on the white tablecloth. "Before you sign that document, everyone should know the company advising this family is not licensed to manage investments." I laid down the second page. "The house you said nobody could touch already has a lien against it for $182,000. My father's face drained. I laid down the third. "Mom's signature appears on a document dated the same day she was at Aunt Marjorie's medical appointment. That is a question for a lawyer, not a bridegroom." Then I placed the final page in front of Lorna. "And the man calling himself Dorian Vale used the name Dorian Kell 2 years ago under a company that dissolved after retirees filed complaints about missing money." I looked at my sister, not my father. "I am not asking you to hate him. I am asking you not to sign your life to a man whose facts cannot stand in daylight." Dorian laughed first because men like him always try charm before panic. He said I was jealous. He said I had printed fake papers. He said older sisters often struggle when the younger one becomes happy. But the seals were there. The notary was reading them. My mother was staring at the date beside her signature. My father was looking at the lien like it had punched him in the chest. And when the room did not come back to Dorian, he changed. His voice rose. His finger came up. He called me a miserable woman with no husband, no children, and nothing but a stack of papers to keep her warm. That insult was meant to shame me. It saved everyone, because the whole room saw the groom vanish and the predator step out. Lorna took one step away from him. My father lowered the pen. Dorian looked around and understood that 200 witnesses had just watched his mask fall. He walked out through the side door before the cake was cut. This time, no one followed him fast enough to bring him back. 3 days later, the police had my folder. My mother had given a statement about the signature, and my father was sitting at his kitchen table like a man who had survived a fire but could still smell smoke in his clothes. He asked me, very quietly, what we were supposed to do now. That was the moment the old Vivian would have given everything. She would have emptied savings, forgiven insults, and purchased love at full price from people who had never offered it on sale. But I was not that daughter anymore. I told him I would help with lawyers, filings, and a repayment plan. I told him every dollar would be written down. No open promises, no family guilt, no more imaginary college fund hanging over my head like a rotten ribbon. My father looked ashamed, but shame is not the same as change. So I made him sign the agreement before I paid a cent toward saving the house. He called it cold. I called it honest. And for the first time in my life, honesty protected me instead of punishing me. A month later, my mother made a lemon cake and placed it in front of my chair instead of in the center of the table. She said, "It wasn't fair, Vivian, the way we treated you. I saw it and I let it happen because it was easier." She did not ask me to say it was okay. That is how I knew she finally understood that some things are not okay just because time has passed. Lorna did not marry Dorian. She cried for him, then hated him, then cried for the version of herself that had believed him. My father stopped mentioning the education money. He stopped calling my work little numbers. He still was not good at apologizing, but when the house was safe, he mailed me a copy of the cleared lien with one sentence written on a sticky note: "You saved what I almost gave away." It was not enough to erase 38 years, but it was true, and truth has weight. So here's the lesson I carried out of that house. Sometimes revenge is not shouting. Sometimes revenge is staying calm while the person who mocked you realizes your quiet work was the only thing standing between them and ruin. Sometimes justice is a folder, a seal, a date, a signature that does not match. And sometimes the strongest sentence you can say to family is not, "I forgive you." It is, "I will help you, but only with boundaries." If someone in your life keeps calling your wisdom bitterness, write everything down. Keep the receipts. Protect your name. Because one day the same people laughing at your little ledger may need every page inside it. Commentary, discussion, explanation, and lessons. Now let's slow down and talk about what really happened in this story, because this was not only about a ruined wedding, it was about a woman who had been ignored for years, but still became the only person strong enough to protect the same family that never valued her. Vivian was not trying to destroy her sister's happiness. She was trying to stop a dangerous man before he took everything from them. Her father kept insulting her, calling her work little numbers, and even used fake college money to control her. But the truth was, Vivian had already built her own life. She did not need his money. She needed him to finally see her as a grown woman with value. The most powerful part of this story is how calm Vivian stayed. She did not scream at the wedding. She did not create drama without proof. She waited, collected documents, checked names, found the lien, and exposed Dorian with facts. That is real strength. Sometimes revenge is not loud. Sometimes revenge is simply placing the truth on the table and letting everyone see who is lying. Dorian was dangerous because he knew how to act helpful. He studied the family's weakness. He knew Lorna wanted to feel chosen, and he knew the father wanted a son-like figure to admire him. That is how manipulators work. They do not always enter your life looking evil. Sometimes they enter as the person who helps too much. The biggest lesson here is about boundaries. Vivian did help her parents, but she did not become their free bank or emotional servant. She helped on paper, with rules, with protection. That teaches us something important. Loving your family does not mean destroying yourself for them. This story also shows that being underestimated can become power. Vivian's family ignored her skills until those same skills saved their house. So if people laugh at your quiet work, your discipline, or your careful thinking, do not stop. One day, the thing they mocked may become the thing they need most. The final message is simple. Keep your dignity, keep your proof, and never let family guilt make you forget your own worth.